Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Seagull 1963. This watch is available from seagull1963.org in two versions. With the acrylic crystal you're looking at here, the price is €269. The sapphire crystal version is €279 respectively. You can use the discount code WR4KSTRAP to get 50% discount off any strap on seagull1963.org. So firstly, let's look at the tin that the watch comes in, and then I'll talk you through the other items one gets with the piece. So the watch comes in a tin which is protected by this white cardboard outer box. One removes the box, and this is the tin itself, finished to a good standard, and it adds to the vintage military aesthetic of the piece. Credible alternative to using the default option of a cardboard box or a plastic watch box. The underside of the lid is lined with a foam panel, and the watch sits in the base inside this foam cutout panel, so it does a good job of protecting the watch in shipping. And I like it because originally military issued pieces were given to soldiers and pilots in metal tins rather than plastic or cardboard watch boxes. With regards to the other items, one also gets this card, and it details the operations of the chronograph complication and setting the time. On the reverse, it has the terms and conditions of the international warranty, and I'm pleased to report the Seagull 1963 is covered by a 12-month international warranty. And lastly, one also gets this tag, as you can see. So, with regards to the specifications of the piece, this is the Seagull 1963. This is the 38mm version. The watch is also produced in 40mm and 42mm versions, but this is close to the original version. The Seagull 1963 was originally a military issued piece. It was manufactured for the Chinese Air Force. It was a pilot's watch, and the original name of it was the Project D304. And this is very true to the original proportions of the Project D304. 38mm case diameter. We have a 46.9mm lug-to-lug measurement, a thickness of 14.4mm, and a lug width of 20mm. The Green Army NATO strap is straight and parallel, 20mm at the lugs and also 20mm at the buckle and tang. Solid 316L grade stainless steel buckle and tang, good heavy gauge of metal, no sharp edges, no burrs, flawless mirror polishing throughout. The hardware is all mirror polished, two keepers which are stitched and fixed into position. So I'll show you the underside of the strap. As you can see, the two fixed keepers are stitched either side to prevent them sliding out of position. Good quality weave to the nylon NATO. It feels very like ballistic nylon. And the quality of the NATO strap is very good because around it holes are welded to prevent them fraying. Plenty of holes in the strap to allow for fine tuning the length. And also the end of the strap is also welded to prevent it fraying. So it's a thin NATO strap, very soft and supple. It's not going to require any breaking in, but the quality of the weave of the nylon is good. With regards to the rest of the specification, we have an acrylic crystal. Now, as I've discussed, this Seagull 1963 is available in two versions, acrylic crystal or alternatively sapphire crystal. If you're concerned about the acrylic being softer than mineral crystal and sapphire respectively and getting scuffs and scratches, I recommend you purchase the sapphire crystal version. Personally, I prefer the acrylic version. Now, that may come as a surprise to you because, of course, acrylic is softer and therefore more prone to being scuffed and scratched. But the original Project D304 had an acrylic crystal, and therefore this is a more purist version of the watch, truer to the original from 1963. The acrylic crystal gives a characteristic distortion to it, beautiful dome to it, and it really does look like the vintage D304. So I actually think the acrylic fits it better in terms of aesthetics to the sapphire crystal. Absolutely beautiful to look at. So this dial is exactly the same as the original Project D304, and I really like the dial layout, the perfect symmetry of the two sub-dials at 9 and 3 o'clock, and also the contrasting blued hands give excellent legibility, and I love the gilt applied indices and also the large gilt Arabic numerals. The legibility of this dial is outstanding. It's just beautifully executed, easy to read, and despite the lack of AR coating, it's actually surprisingly legible. So it's very well thought through dial design. Now, I also like the contrasting red chronograph hand, and that contrasts very well with the dial, the indices, and also the blued minute and hour hand. So let's test the chronograph complication. The top pusher activates the chronograph complication, and you'll see the red contrasting chronograph hand begins to sweep around the dial. Pressing the top pusher again stops the chronograph complication. Pressing the lower pusher will cause the chronograph hand to fly back to 12 o'clock and reset. Perfect alignment. I'll just test it again. This is something I really like about the Seagull caliber ST1901. The alignment of the mechanical movement, which is a column wheel chronograph, is very good. It's exactly the same alignment quality as one would get with a Seiko mecha quartz, such as the VK63 for example. I really like the way that the red chronograph hand always resets to bang on 12 o'clock. So I'll just stop it again, and if you look closely, you can see it resets to precisely the centre of the dial. So the alignment is correct. Very good quality control. So as it's a manual wind column wheel chronograph movement, it has a push-pull crown rather than screw-down crown, and that means that in the closed position, one can manually wind the caliber ST1901. One can feel the tension in the mainspring gradually building up. Good firm resistance to the caliber ST1901. It's very pleasant, very smooth to manually wind, and I really like it. One can feel the tension gradually building up to its maximum 42 hours. So pulling it out to the first click position is the final click position, and that is the time setting position. As you can see, it's got a nice firm resistance to the gearing. One can feel the friction of the gearing, but it does feel smooth. Feels like a good solid movement, and it's an absolute pleasure to set the time, and it feels very smooth both clockwise and anti-clockwise. Pushing it back in restarts the movement, and it's now closed and back in the manual wind position. So I'll show you the Caseback because it's one of my favourite aspects of the piece. Now both the acrylic version and the sapphire crystal version have sapphire crystal glazed exhibition casebacks. Now this is very unusual. I've never seen this on a exhibition caseback before. If you look closely, when I tilt it in the lights, you can see the sapphire crystal has a blue tint to it because it actually has blue tinted AR coating on the underside. Often it's the case with watch brands. They use mineral crystal rather than sapphire crystal in the exhibition caseback as a cost-cutting measure because mineral crystal is less expensive. This uses sapphire crystal, which is more scratch resistant, and they've even added blue tinted AR coating, which enhances it because it means you can get better clarity when looking at the movement. Now the bridges to the movement are decorated with milled stripes, and they are mirror polished as well, so very highly reflective. So they've made the correct choice by using AR coating because it means you can get a good look at the Seagull caliber ST1901 through the exhibition caseback. Absolutely beautifully decorated, as you can see. It's decorated with milled stripes on the bridges but also blued screws, and the quality of the finishing to the gears in terms of the polishing and the bevels on the edges of the bridges are done to a very high standard. It's just a beautifully finished movement. So I really like it. So I think they've made the correct decision by using a screw down exhibition caseback rather than a solid stainless steel caseback because the movement is just an absolute delight to look at. Beautifully finished. Just absolutely gorgeous, and of course it's an iconic aspect of the Seagull 1963, the caliber ST1901. Right, so let's discuss the movement in detail. Now, there are several copies of the Seagull 1963, and straight away I would say it's a case of one gets what one pays for. There are also several copies of the Seagull ST1901 movements. If you see Seagull 1963s on AliExpress for under €200, I would disregard those pieces because they are copies of the original and the movements used are copies of the original ST1901. The movement you're looking at here is an original ST1901 and it's produced in Tianjin Watch Factory. Tianjin Watch Factory were the original makers of the Project D304 movements, the ST1901s used in that piece. It has 21 joules, it's a column wheel chronograph movement, and effectively the caliber ST1901 is a clone of the Venus caliber 175. So the Venus 175 was produced in Switzerland in the 1950s, and then what happened was the machinery that was used to make the Venus 175 was exported from Switzerland to China. And effectively the movement was cloned. This is a clone of the Venus 175. The design of the movement, the architecture, the parts are all identical. Many of the parts of the ST1901 are actually interchangeable with the Venus 175. But the finishing of this movement is actually higher grade because we have milled stripes on the bridges and we also have blued screws, so it's actually a better decorated movement than the original Venus caliber 175, which was Swiss made. The design is exactly the same. It's a column wheel chronograph, which is a manual wind movement, 42-hour power reserve, and it has the same 21 joules. So the design is exactly the same as the Venus 175, and I would say that the quality control, the build quality and materials are equal to the Venus 175, which was made in the 1950s. So from 1963, as the name suggests, Seagull 1963, the caliber ST1901 was made for the Project D304, and that's the movement you're looking at here. But this is the original. This is from Tianjin Watch Factory. It's not a copy or clone of it. So I would say to you, really it's a case of one gets what one pays for. You have to pay €269 to get an original Seagull 1963 with an original Tianjin Watch Factory Seagull ST1901 movement. Absolutely gorgeous to look at. As you can see, the gears are polished to a very high standard, and the quality of the movement finishing is also done to a very high standard. Just absolutely gorgeous to look at. The detail of this movement is superb, and it's reason alone to purchase this piece. Really, the sapphire crystal with blue AR coating is excellent, and the screw down case back is mirror polished to a very high standard. I really like it. Right, so I'll give you a wrist shot and you can see how it fits on my 8-inch wrist. Now, as you can see, the NATO strap is just a fraction too short to engage the end of the strap in both of the keepers, but however, with my 8-inch wrist, I can engage the keeper, the first keeper actually I can just engage it with the second one as well, as you can see. So it does just fit my 8-inch wrist. But if you have a 6 to 7-inch wrist, you'll find that this fits you no problem whatsoever. So the 38mm case is very similar to the original proportions of the Project D304. Now, it's actually quite surprising that it's a low profile piece at only 14.4mm, even though it has an exhibition case back and also a domed acrylic crystal, as you can see. One would actually expect this to be in excess of 15mm, but it's 14.4. It is going to be more difficult to slip underneath a shirt cuff if you wear business shirts, but the thing I really like about this piece is the lack of heft. On the NATO strap you're looking at, it's only 63 grams. It's an incredibly lightweight piece, the kind of heft one would expect with a quartz powered piece. And I really like that. It feels weightless, it feels very well balanced on the wrist, very comfortable to wear for long periods of time, such as 8 to 12 hours per day. Absolutely gorgeous. It is just a delight to look at the blued hands and the contrasting red chronograph hand. And the gilt applied indices and also the gilt applied Arabic numerals have a lovely metallic mirror polished finish to them, which contrasts with the dial. Just absolutely gorgeous to look at. I really do think the acrylic crystal version, although not as scratch resistant as the sapphire version, does give it that vintage aesthetic. It really does look like a 1963 piece. And I like the characteristic slight distortion and magnification effect one gets with the domed acrylic crystal. Just absolutely gorgeous the way it catches the light. The domed mirror polished stainless steel bezel is finished to a very high standard, and it's just a very good looking piece to wear. So very comfortable, the feel good factor is outstanding, but clearly suited to collectors with a smaller wrist of 6 to 7 inches. If you're a collector with a 7 to 8 inch wrist, you may want to consider the 40 or 42mm version, which gives more wrist presence. So lastly, I'll summarise the piece. What do I think of it overall? Well, when I'm considering reviewing a watch for my channel, the watch should meet 2 criteria. It should be both excellent quality and excellent value at the respective price point. So this is available in 2 versions. The acrylic version is €269 and the sapphire crystal version is €279 respectively. Now really, to evaluate this piece, one has to consider the quality of the finishing throughout, the quality control, the materials and the build quality. So studying the finishing to the head of the piece, you can see the mirror polishing to every facet of the case, the flanks of the case, the tops of the lugs and the bezel is absolutely flawless. Often with Chinese watches, in between the lugs is an area that is neglected as a cost-cutting measure. They don't mirror polish in between the lugs, they just machine them and they leave it brush satin finish, but this one is polished in between the lugs to the same quality as the flanks of the case and the tops of the lugs, and also the bezel, as you can see. Absolutely flawless throughout, no sharp edges, no burrs, and nice crisp edges which mark the transition between the tops of the lugs and the flanks. The pushers are also mirror polished to a very high standard, and as you can see, the push-pull crown is embossed with a mirror polished star to a very high standard, coin edge finish to it, and just absolutely gorgeous finishing throughout. Now let's just study the screw down exhibition Caseback for finishing. So as you can see, flawless mirror polish into it, beautifully engraved in Mandarin. Now the sapphire crystal with blue tinted AR coating is just exceptional, absolutely beautiful to look at. So again, no sharp edges, no burrs to the underside of the case, and also the screw down exhibition Caseback. Absolutely gorgeous. The finishing to the movement is exceptional. I've looked at several Seagull caliber ST1901s, and I can tell you that the quality of the finishing on the Tianjin watch factory version you're looking at here is the very best. It's just absolutely gorgeous. I've looked at this under magnification at macro level, and I can tell you the finishing to the gears, the finishing to the bridges, to the movement, and the blued screws are all exceptional. It's the highest quality Seagull caliber ST1901 money can buy. So 10 out of 10 finishing throughout, no imperfections whatsoever, no quality control issues whatsoever, and the chronograph complication works perfectly. One thing I really like about it, as I've detailed, is the perfect alignment of the contrasting red chronograph hand, which resets bang on 12 o'clock every time. So when it comes to Seagull 1963 watches, as I've discussed, one has to disregard anything on AliExpress under €200. To get an original with an original Tianjin watch factory, one has to pay €269. So yes, I consider it to be excellent quality, and yes, I consider it to be excellent value at €269. I'm going to declare it a champagne watch for lemonade money. So I hope you've enjoyed my review of the Seagull 1963. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you very much.